So welcome to our Outcome Selling Advisory Ecosystem meeting on outcome mapping. My name is Kasha, and I'm the director of this group at Ecosystems. We are thrilled to have one of our members present today, Alex Hesterberg. Alex is Senior Vice President and Chief Customer Officer at Turbonomic. He'll be leading a discussion on how to align complex solutions with customers' desired business outcomes. And as Chad just noted, if everyone could please mute yourself if you're not speaking, and turn your video on to facilitate the conversation. And then I also wanted to remind you that we're recording this live so that we can share it with everyone afterwards. I'll then turn this over to Chad so that he can introduce our topic and Alex.
Thank you, Kasha. Welcome, everybody, to the Outcome Selling Advisory Ecosystem. Chad Quinn, CEO of Ecosystems. Happy to be your host for our session today. I think before we even jump right into the topic, I wanted to take a moment with some of the members and talk about our community, because I think it's kind of a fun fact. Our community, this advisory ecosystem, is just 8 months in existence, and we now already have 40 companies that are part of this community. And they're not just companies, they're some of the most progressive companies out there. So when you think of our member list, these are companies that are making the Forbes Fast 50 list. These are companies making the World Most Admired Company list. These are the companies that are making the top 100 cloud provider list. So it's just a testament to everybody here and the quality that we've been able to assemble around this community, and excited to kind of venture into another session with you. You know the old expression, you are the company you keep, and we're in pretty good company with this group. We're excited to have everyone. And probably another dynamic just to share up front is we're actually having members invite other members, and that's wonderful to see this be something that the membership owns, the quality and this organic growth going forward. So encourage you, if you have people that you want to be a part of this, please let us know. We want to make sure that this is a constant growing community. Speaking of members, our inaugural member, who's been in it with us from the beginning, is our guest today. The folks, Alex is going to be helping guide our conversation. So when we started in October of 2018, we had our inaugural session, and Alex was one of those key members there. And one thing I've learned in working with Alex is he is a role model for what you want in a member. Highly participatory, very engaged from the outset of our advisory, somebody who's willing to share, knowing that we don't all have it figured out, but he's willing to put his journey out there and share it with you, and also hear from you as to what your perspectives are. So we're thrilled. Alex Hesterberg, Senior Vice President, Chief Customer Officer at Turbonomic. And as Kasha mentioned, wonderful background in leadership, 20-year veteran of technology, and has really led companies in their customer-facing activities and how to bring those activities to scale and how to make them impactful programs. And he's going to address a topic that I know the membership is very interested in. We have gotten such a response on this session, and that's the topic of how do I engage my buyer if I have a complex offering in a way that's digestible and meaningful for them to be able to work with me. And what we know, if we just kind of go from some history as an advisory, we know that in February, one of our members, Tamara Shank, she actually presented research that showed that contrary to this whole trend of that buyers aren't engaging sellers, buyers are engaging sellers when they perceive the solution as being complex. So it's really in our interest to understand how we can be thoughtful and how we can map around outcomes at a very early stage with a prospective buyer to ensure that it's digestible and meaningful. And so Alex is going to help guide our conversation in that regard. We're excited to have him. I've known Alex probably in June, it'll be over a year, and I'll tell you that even in our prep sessions around this, we wanted to start to record. Even then, we wanted to bring in the members because we thought, God, this topic is so great. So we had a lot of great prep around it. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Alex to kind of share his journey. Probably the last point I'll just say is there are points of our discussion where we're going to pause and ask a question because we really want to hear from the members on particular points. So when you see a question, I may reintroduce myself and just kind of collect some thoughts from the members and provide some feedback. So with that, I will turn it over to Alex.
Thank you, Chad. Thanks for the introduction. It's been great working with you and the team. It's been a lot of fun, actually, and it's I certainly don't have any silver bullets, as we were joking about earlier, and it's great to get communities like this together to see. We can call them best practices, or like we were joking earlier, that we can chew through concrete together if we're running into the same kind of problems. But I've been very, very fortunate to work with some incredible teams over the last several years at what I would call transformational or disruptive technology companies. And a lot of the muscle memory and a lot of what we end up doing is the same as you bring a new technology or a new product or a new company to market. But the differences are the nuances of how it gets consumed. And so those are the things that I still, every company I go to, you really need to understand those nuances. And so what I have up here is that transformational tech, at least in my opinion, is an opportunity. It's almost what I would consider to be a mandate to be prescriptive. And the more prescriptive you can be, particularly if you are with a company that is pushing a product or a concept that doesn't have a line item or a budget, prescription can help solve for a number of those challenges. I tend not to read off of slides, and I am going to show you some things in the next couple of slides just to ground everybody in our day-to-day, at least here at Turbonomic, and the challenges that we face when we're dealing with a complex technology or a technology that might be easy to install, but it goes into complex landscapes. And I think some of the learnings here, at least the ones that we've had, apply whether you have one product that integrates to a lot of things and drives complexity there, or if you own a portfolio of solutions that have to come together at some point. I think a lot of the outcomes end up being very similar. So we are very feature rich from a technology perspective. We found that as we went into different environments, a lack of prescription really prolonged sales cycles. I don't think that's a surprise to many people. And for us, where we found if we were not tied to technical or even business outcomes from the very, very beginning, we tended to get kind of lost in either never-ending sales cycles or, quite frankly, outmaneuvered by competition. So I'm going to share with you a couple of things that, in the spirit of chewing through concrete, the concrete that we've chewed through together here, in order to get to a point where we could take complex concepts down to specific outcomes and get customers rallied around it. So the first and foremost, I'm not going to explain really what our technology does, because this is not about a pitch for Turbonomic, but our technology sits within a very complex landscape of logos and vendors. And what I wanted to point out here is the important thing that we're leaning on is we're telling customers that we're leveraging the investments that they've already made. We are tending to tell a story that aligns to where they've spent money and what they're already doing and how we're ultimately going to make that better. The other side of the sword, though, the double-edged sword, is that when you're connecting to and you're playing a role with lots of different vendors, the use cases can be kind of almost crazy in number. And that's where the prescription ends up coming in. So when I show customers where we sit and the other logos and investments we're going to play with, the first question they ask is, well, that's great. Now I'm not afraid of you. Now I'm opening to hearing the discussion around what you can bring for me, but how would I use you? And so that's where some people might call it this is not a reference architecture, in my opinion. This is more of a story. But we start to tell the story of where the customers are spending their time with their own internal or external their own internal, external users, the landscape of technology and workflow that they might be using, the technology investment they've made in the supply side. And this is Turbo specific, but we call out these logos and we call out the personas that they're dealing with on a daily basis in order to tell a story that hopefully we're getting right, a story that hopefully they're dealing with every day. And they start to take something that is for them initially abstract, and there's no line item for it, there's no budgeted line item for it, and they start to see where it plays within the elements that do have line items and within the stories that they go through every single day. So we embed ourselves essentially into something that they're already comfortable with, and some companies do this naturally. Some people try to come in from the left and just really disruptive and say you can rip things out and replace it all with me. But if you're dealing with the logos and the competition and the ecosystem that I've traditionally dealt with, very tough to let go of vendors you've been working with for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So for us, it's about understanding the story, letting them know we're part of that story, and then tying it to the value. And when I get to, and so once I can get a customer grounded in that they understand what it is, I could do, they understand I'm a part of their ecosystem, and they understand that I have an understanding of their stories, then I can go into a little bit about what we do. And when I talk about guiding a customer through the art of the possible, it starts to translate what they see and where we live within their own environment into how they can use us. Now, I call this my shock and awe slide because I never read off of it. I never actually use it as a backbone of a discussion with a customer. But what I do is I say, you know, there's so much that we plug into and connect with and integrate with that the use cases and the value is almost limitless. So the good news here, Mr. or Miss Customer, is that we've chewed through the concrete internally and broken down exactly what goals and what projects you can associate us with and see value from. And that's kind of that top line of project goals going across the top. The middle line of goal value, those are the outcomes. So when we're working on a project with you, you're going to see an outcome, and we're going to agree to that outcome. And the third line on the bottom is the progress metrics. So you're going to agree to a project, you're going to see an outcome from that project with our technology and our people, and we're going to measure it by a very specific set of metrics. And we did the due diligence and we did the concrete chewing in order to stitch all this together, and then broke it down against how our customers adopt today. And this is something we revisit every quarter. What are the trends and use cases in customer adoption? We have an adoption, or what we call a maturity matrix, in terms of which trends are most common, where customers are starting with today. Because what we find is what might have been considered an advanced trend or an advanced topic a year ago, today it could be showing up in our proof of concept. It could be the first thing customers are asking for. And so we have that index built where we're showing customers, other customers, and how they're adopting us and why it's important. But the other thing is, this is our first step in gaining some credibility that we're not just a technology that gets dropped in and gets plugged in and the customer's off on their own. There's a rigidity and a prescription that we can take them through and show through progress that we're delivering on what we promised. So I'll pause there for the first question slide.
Yeah, no, this is great. And I want to open it up to the community. Maybe twofold. One is just some reactions, any initial reactions to what Alex is representing from his own journey would be a first tee-up question. And then second, love to hear from members on how you're trying to tackle this issue of complexity and making it easier for your buyer to digest. What are some thoughts from the membership?
Yeah, hey, this is Dion Hedgepeth. This is my first call with you guys. I'm just joining the group, so super excited to be here. I work at Aptio, so we also have a pretty complex solution as well, with lots of different use cases that you can do. I guess, Alex, this thing you're talking about, it's always sales cycle, never post-sales?
No, that's an excellent question. I'm actually going to get into that in the next section, but we set the stage. We organized our thoughts, the alignment of goals to outcomes to metrics, to the point where we start in pre-sales, and now we get to the point where our SEs, our pre-sales organization, which I actually own here at Turbonomic, is trained on specific use cases and outcomes to demonstrate in pre-sales, which sets the tone and the tenor for what gets handed off in terms of responsibility to post-sales. So,
got it.
So we get aligned on outcomes and metrics before the PO is actually signed. So the handoff to post-sales is a lot more clean.
Got it. So, and do you guys build your service delivery off what the use cases are that you guys decide up front, or is it more of a generic delivery service? Kind of real quick, I know that's a pretty broad question. I don't want to spend 30 minutes on, but yeah. I guess how that works.
So what we end up doing, and in fact, it's really topical because over the last 3 to 6 months, so this concrete chewing that I keep joking about, we started that about 12, 18 months ago. Over the last 3 to 6 months, we've been taking these individual elements, right, that we can still measure by metrics, and aggregating them, maybe we stitch 2 or 3 together or 4 or 5 together and create outcomes. So if I take 3 or 4 use cases from one particular area and another use case from another area, I'm delivering an outcome for that customer. And we really just put that blueprint together now. It's one of our deliverables in our partner program. So when we're enabling our partners today on our technology, we will teach the technical staff how to actually deliver against all those individual use cases. But what we'll give to their services organization is actually a blueprint of outcomes, which are an aggregation and combination of different use cases together. And sometimes that's of benefit and value if they're really kind of initially wrapping their head around our tech. Sometimes they're good just understanding the use cases, and they have their own fairly robust services portfolio that they plug it right into.
Got it. It's awesome. We do a lot of this post sales. Obviously, it's better to do it pre-sales. There's a work in progress. I think that we got to do, but would just love to learn more offline. This is great.
You might like the next section then. Chad.
Hey, Alex, this is Bingley, and I'm from AT&T. I apologize for some reason my video is not working out here, but I think the part that you put down about not threatening the existing ecosystem of vendors is really key. And I speak to this from the perspective of somebody who's also evaluating a lot of technology that's coming into our organization. And I think that's just really key, because I know our internal IT organization gets its hackles up if you're going to come in with something that they think is going to replace the system of record, so to say, and you sometimes have to clarify with them that, hey, here's how it ties in. This does not replace it. It's a system of execution that gets overlaid on a system of record, and always keep the underlying core elements together. That's another thing you might want to weave into your pitch, in terms of that you don't change the core underlying system of record, right? Sometimes referring to the system of execution, if that's what it is, allows you to kind of get past some of those discussions. Just a thought for you to add in to what is an excellent approach.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out. It is part of our messaging. I didn't call it out here, but yeah, if you come in as any kind of a rip and replace, or you even take the shape or look and smell like a rip and replace, what I find is often you get the pocket vetoes. You get people saying, "Oh, this sounds great," and they don't actually go and do anything. Or worse, they become antibodies over the course of time, right? You're the new tech, you're the foreign entity, and they're the antibodies that ultimately just kind of want to squash you into a box and not use you. So yeah, the converse of that is getting certain people and champions so excited about it that they see it as innovation. They see it as something they can bet, a part of their career on, or as something that they can invest in themselves over the next 3 to 5 years. And those are the technologies I get really excited about, because I don't see them going away for 3 to 5 years. I see it as part of the change and evolution of our space. And if you find those customers, those champions, they get excited about it too, and they almost kind of take you from as they leave one customer, they'll bring it to the next customer. And that's the other side of the spectrum that's just super positive.
Do you also simultaneously work with that ecosystem that you tie into so they don't feel threatened? Because one of the things I've observed is some of the underlying vendors that you integrate into claim, well, don't do that. That's just a little feature function that we're going to add into our roadmap over time. So wait and see that. Do you face that issue, and how do you combat that?
So it's the expression like frenemies or co-opetition. There's always there's a little bit of overlap, and everybody's got their own lens about how to do certain functions, especially in infrastructure IT. What I found is, though, as those companies start to hit scale, and they're getting out of their $50-100 million annual run rate, and they're getting into the $500 million, $1 billion, $5 billion, right? And they become publicly traded. They become very, very heavily reliant, by and large, on very sophisticated channel partners and alliances. And what we found is, meeting at the channel and alliance level, those are the resources, the architects that are right in front of customers. They've got all of the battle scars and the wounds from working with different vendors, and they have a pretty good sense of who's really the best at what. And they've become that meeting point for stitching together the solution that is best of breed. And that's, as most of these most disruptive tech companies come out of that $100 million mark, they really start leaning. I've never seen an infrastructure tech company personally grow to $1 billion or more without leveraging a partner ecosystem that is stitching technologies together. Does that make sense?
Thank you. You answered my question.
Okay. I'll keep going here in the essence, for the sake of time. So now that we've done the shock and awe, and I do love the shock and awe slide, not from just from the small print, but it is now for us, it's about taking it, putting it in the language of the customer. And this was something we wrestled with quite a bit, and it's not uncommon for tech companies to really get you eat and sleep and breathe your own tech just over and over every day in your own four walls, right? You have your own language, your own nomenclature. Whether or not that translates to customers is oftentimes not the case. So we take some steps of really putting it into the language of our customers. Sometimes these are more key technical outcomes. Sometimes, and we found it's harder for us to do, but actually getting to what we call positive business outcomes. Like, can we tie something to a business outcome that is not just, I can save you some money on servers, right? You could argue whether or not that's a business outcome. So for us, we started orienting ourselves and what we could propose in the pre-sale cycle to language that the customer's so outcomes in the customer language, improving stability, reducing my data center costs, manual labor, adopting public cloud. This is all in the language of the customer. So we would end up recommending and proposing in pre-sales what we thought we could do based on what we were seeing in the POC environment. This then translated, assuming everything goes well and the customer sees what they want to see in a proof of concept, we then ink the deal, and that becomes the foundation, as we were talking about before, that becomes the foundation and the handoff. So if you talk about, now we're taking use cases and we're attaching them to work streams. You might have them in Gantt charts, you might have them in kind of high-level project plans, but we are now taking the use cases for that customer, the ones that the customer that said, out of that shock and awe, right, here are the 4, 5, or 6 that are relevant to me, that your pre-sales engineer and your AE showed me. And now those are the things I want us to focus on. So we reiterate the use case tied to the positive business outcome. What are they going to get from this use case? We're going to come to that agreement on the metrics to measure that by. Metrics, just inherently, usually percentages, numbers, hours, pluses, minuses. These are the things that become a little bit more black and white and infallible. And then we ultimately also decide, how are we going to show this to you? Do we show it to you in a PowerPoint every week? Do we show it to you within the UI? Or do we show it to you in executive dashboards? There's we make sure we're just rock solidly aligned, selfishly, not just between us and the customer, but also between pre-sales and post-sales. What we found is customers really wanted to see things post-sales that potentially we showed or talked about in pre-sales, and we were not able to actually show it in the product. So we took a lot of the customer demand coming from pre-sales, made sure we had closed loop with product and services, and then over the course of time, now there is nothing in SE, promises, commits, or demonstrates in pre-sales that can't be demonstrated and delivered against in post-sales in the same format. And that alignment was very, very big for us. It was hugely critical in order to close a gap between expectation setting and ultimately what we're delivering.
Excellent, Alex. Let's open it again, because I think this topic is so rich with context, and for the members, maybe a tee-up question would just be, if you're listening and digesting Alex's approach and journey, how would you kind of self-assess where you feel you are along this continuum of use cases, KPIs, business outcomes, and having some type of structure to share? That would be one question I'd love folks to kind of share, or any follow-ups to Alex and some of the material he has presented today. I want to open it back up to the community.
Hey, Alex, this is Jonathan Nichols from HP. Very interesting. The upfront stuff we've been doing for a little over a year now with the partnership with ecosystems, but what you articulated on that full 360-degree view and ensuring that it's correlated with what you're actually delivering through your delivery organization, customer success management organization. How long did that take you guys to get there and get alignment? Because pre-sales and services delivery are sometimes at different understandings of what value is to the customer because they're focused in different domain knowledge areas. So curious as to how you worked through it, how long it took you guys.
So I will say there was an advantage that we have here, and actually for my last 3 companies, I've owned both pre-sales, so the pre-sales systems engineers, and post-sales. So when you have those groups, and of course extending out to renewals and tech support and training, All of those groups roll into customer success. So we actually start with customer success, technically speaking, in the pre-sale cycle. And so I had a really, really good, and I'm not just talking about from, hitting people on the head and telling them to do things. I was fortunate to have insight from our pre-sales organization in terms of their initial challenges with being able to show things in the product that the customer wanted to see. And if there were challenges and frictions there was totally going to be challenges in the post-sales handoff of, well, I told the customer this, I hope you had a chance to deliver it. The bridging of that gap took, some things were faster than others, meaning we had to do the baseline level set. What could we show in the product today that an SE can easily demonstrate, and it ties to values that an account executive would be talking about? And that was a very, like I say, it was a short list, but let's say it was a finite list of things that we could show in the product, pre-sales and post. And from there, we did the aggregation over the course of, I'd say it was probably 2 to 3 months, where we had monthly visits with product management on the gaps, the things customers were asking for that the product could do, but it was Herculean to be able to go show it. And so we had these once a month tiebacks with product management, making sure that those use cases were captured. A lot of things depended on UI. Some things required code changes in the marketplace, part of our product. But eventually, within 3 to 6 months, we had complete parity between what SEs were demonstrating and what post-sales had to go deliver. And in the course of doing that, we pulled our sales enablement team in and made sure that our sales deck and our enablement around usage of the product, technical enablement, was on par with the things that we had now kind of shifted on and could show in the product. So I would say 3 to 6 months from concept to execution, and for us that included pre-sales, post-sales, product, and sales enablement all together in working in orchestration.
Thank you.
Hey, Alex, I have maybe there's a question for everyone. I mean, one of the challenges we have at Aptio is, I think this makes a ton of sense for big deals. You've got lots of people in the sales cycle. You've got pre-sales involved. There's a lot of interaction. But as we've gone down market and the deals have gotten smaller and our deal velocity has gotten faster, in a lot of our deals, there's no pre-sales. It's like customers are buying us because they know they need Aptio. It's good for them. But and sales guys aren't going to go, oh, let's slow down the sales cycle and really extract all the use cases. And so it's tricky because we often get a customer who, when you ask, you want transparency, it's very high level. And then we do this whole leader use case thing post-sales. I guess the question is, can this become less people intensive, more self-serve? Have you guys figured out how to deliver this kind of outcome, which is awesome, in a lighter sales cycle?
Yes. So you're hitting on some very key points. So remember I talked earlier about all those different use cases, kind of the shock and awe stuff. Part of the method behind the madness of pulling those use cases together, that into outcomes. Part of the madness there was we wanted to be able, within our CPQ, within our quoting tool, when a certain product, a certain license, certain level, certain term was quoted, we had a list of outcomes, which are the aggregated use cases, that could also be added to the quote. And in that way, and again, this was a lot of battle testing, especially with our commercial and velocity teams, which are lower dollar, higher volume, more transactional, of what the common outcomes were that customers were most interested in. So we created those outcomes, which are the aggregation of the use cases, which we know we could do because we spent all that time making sure they were in the product and everybody understood them. And then putting a description together so that a rep a commercial rep, even an SDR, can say, hey, you want to do this 25K, 50K deal? We recommend this package. It's going to give you these outcomes. Here's a brief description. Does that make sense? And that's the way we've taken the step to, like I said, get through having to custom scope everything and to get things that are just out the door, slap it on the side of a quote, and we know what we've signed up for when we did the services engineering on that package to begin with.
That's good, and that works post sales. Like the use case, it matches what the customer actually wanted, and without the heavy people. I mean, that's yeah.
Exactly. So in that description, they'll say as part of this package, you will receive this, 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 and this, and it's also aligned with the how many licenses are going out. We use the element of workload, so it could be virtual machine, could be a container pod, could be an instance in public cloud. We've had to come up with common parity, common denominators across lots of different landscapes. But we know based on X number of pods, containers, workloads, virtual machines, that a package gives you up to a certain amount of coverage from a service perspective. And if you need more, you sell 2 or 3 or 10.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Alex, it's Pete Smerald. I just wanted to comment and kind of give you kudos, because when I looked at your metrics, you didn't try to boil everything into dollars, and I just find that that's such a problem nowadays. It's pretty self-serving for the sales guys, but it doesn't really help things. As far as how far along we are, I've just been with the company a couple of months now, but I'm trying something new, and I'd like you to comment on it. I'm actually developing business outcome sheets by sub-industry for inside sales to use, right? Because if you can get the customer thinking about business outcomes, they'll kind of demand that through the sales cycle, and it's a good way to force some of this adoption. So it's more like, these are the types of business outcomes that we provide. Are you interested? And if that's the beginning of the conversation, it just kind of flows from there. Thoughts?
What I love about that is the other thing is it drives alignment from the start to the end. Because even in this, whether it's sales cycle or it's post sales, and what I've found is that if you've got an outcome that matters, if it's a business outcome, like I shared in the practice session, or I guess a review last week, you might have a positive business outcome could be that the CEO, like Chuck Robbins at Cisco, put out a letter to the shareholders saying that Cisco is moving towards software agility. We understand that we need to become like a hybrid cloud management platform, which will enable X, Y, and Z for our customers. And that this is now a charter that all divisions of Cisco are assuming. Everybody owns a piece of it. And so sometimes we have to help our customers, like if we're talking to somebody who's kind of in the weeds of like the VMware environment, like how does his or her day-to-day translate to that PBO that Chuck Robbins was talking about, right? And what I found is that when you can create that linkage, or if the linkage already exists, if the CIO has done a great job really distilling those goals down, you have alignment. Even so, someone tries to derail a sales cycle or delivery cycle or pocket veto or drag their feet, you can always point back to that PBO that was delivered by the leadership of the customer and that we are mutually working towards. It's a great, and what you just described, being outcome centric and breaking that down per industry, if you're delivering it or you're selling it, it becomes very tough to say, oh, that doesn't matter anymore. It's not important. Like, how could it not be important? Your CEO put it in the message to shareholders. It's not important anymore. So it's for us, it's been a great way to just continually drive alignment. And I think on an industry basis, that becomes very, 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 very sexy, very appealing. If you can go to an industry and say, your industry has these kind of key business outcomes, are they important to you? And if you're focused on the right industry and you're talking to the right membership of that industry, chances are they will be.
Yep.
Cool.
Hi, this is Bruno from BMC Software. This is actually my first call with this team. I was invited by Mike. And so I want to just share what we do here and just share a few comments on the Shocky wall. So I really like the approach. And what we do is actually, and to Peter's comment, what we do, we try to create an alignment from an industry perspective. And we have the communities of practice for each, probably 8 different industries that are most significant for BMC's revenue. And what we do, they produce content that it's easy for an account manager to use and get when presenting something in an executive level, and this drives alignment from the beginning of the sales cycle. So and also to the metrics, another compliment, because not as Peter mentioned, not all the metrics are related to cost or revenue. There are also strategy risk involved, and it is important to map. We found out that we should map everything at least to cost, revenue, strategy, and risk. So what we try to do at BMC is to create an alignment from the solution use case to, or a group of solution use case to a value case. And that value case is what drives the conversation on an executive level, and what gives us the ability to go down and say, hey, Mr. Customer, that's what you need to do. These are the possible use cases, but these are the ones that you should focus because it's going to solve your priorities, or it's going to solve what is in your agenda. And to Dion questions on how to scale that to use on small deals, let's put it that way. So what we do, we create, we call in BMC this process a value-based selling, and we call it something called rapid value-based selling, RVBS, which is basically pre-candidates, which aggregated value case and solution use case. They're easy to use, they are pre-calculated, and you can quickly handle to an account manager. They actually have a portal where they can go and download content to present from the start to end, from an alignment to executive until the solution demo, what it is important for that specific industry, or if he wants or she wants to do in a product as a product centric, it's also possible. The only thing we do slightly different is that instead going from a full list of use cases and then drill down to the one important, because we are constantly looking for the industry alignment or to understand what it is in the C-level agenda, we always go from the top, a few solution use cases or value cases that are really important, and then after we have cycles of interaction with the customer, we go back and say, hey, by the way, we are getting all of all of these other use cases and value out of the solution. So just a few comments.
It's a really good call out. So that's why I call that slide shock and awe. I mean, it literally is not meant. It's not meant to be any kind of a tactic or strategically effective tool. It's more to kind of just make the customer aware that there's so much that we could be doing together. And where we are, our situation is that we often get brought in because we're not a line item anywhere. There's almost 5 to 7 different entry points for us, at different levels, at different parts of the environment, and we could potentially pull from a virtualization budget, a cloud budget, an application performance management budget. There's a bunch of places we can go in different groups, typically disparate groups that we'll work with. So if we're lucky enough to get centered on a person or a group that owns everything, we tend to tighten up the messaging a bit. If we are in a place where we think it's an entry point, we'll talk about the things that matter typically to that entry point, but also make sure that they're aware there are other things that we do. Because if we find a friendly, that friendly is recommending us into those other disparate groups. And the next thing you know, we've got either a broader sales campaign, or we'll win and land, and then we have an expansion plan. But yeah, your point is well taken. And of course, BMC is very, very mature along those lines. You got a lot of big customers. You're a partner of Turbonomics as well. And you have, as is HP, and you've got a very robust set of customers in different verticals and a lot of data points there. So we aspire to get to that level.
I love the interactivity. Want to be conscious a little bit of time and sure. Make sure that we cover. Yep. So very quickly, we don't always go to the world of Gantt charts. We often are using our weekly updates with the customer to just give them rough orders of magnitude of where things should be stopped and started. And of course, each week we're going through each one of those work streams, what the use case is, the activities that are associated with the use case, status, is it stopped, started, is it delayed, what are the results, blockers, things like that. We have some customers that really need those Gantt charts with hundreds of lines of step-by-step, and that's okay.
typically, most of the time, we're keeping it at this level because we're using the data to go back and against each one of the outcomes, or we could say the goals and the intended outcomes that we started with, we are messaging back to each one of those, again, in the customer language on the progress, whether it's, over the course of a month, over the course of 3 months or 6 months, and again, down to numbers. Sometimes it is about cost and revenue. I did love the concept of the strategy and risk elements as well. I took some notes there. But what are the other things that are meaningful to a customer? Because we'll have some people on a network team that might be interested in one thing, some people on a storage or cloud team that might be interested in other things. So we make sure we aggregate the data in a way that's digestible, and it ends up feeding executive communication. And so what we found is that if we're going to be doing all this work, if we drive this initial alignment, there's a reason why the technology is purchased, there's a set of outcomes that we've mutually agreed to, we do make sure that we're reporting back the status, not just within the project team that's tasked with doing these things each week, but also to the executive level. And we'll have, we refer very common expression, the EB, the executive buyer. We're referring to the EB either every week or every 2 weeks, and we're doing 2 things. We're doing 3 things. We're keeping that person, him or her, aware of our progress to date relative to the commitments that we made and the commitment against the commitment they made to us with money and purchase. The second thing that we're doing is we're making them, we're taking this opportunity to take credit for all the work that we meaning us as a vendor and his or her team, that we've accomplished together. And we often will call people out within the account, like part of the customer team saying, Laura did a fantastic job here. John was a game changer and was able to do something in 1 day that normally takes 2 weeks. We will compliment the customer team to the leadership, to the customer's leadership. And the third thing is obviously ask for help. So if we are tied to a PBO, again, if we're tied to that PBO, and we have mutually agreed investment in the importance of that PBO, then we can ask for help in pursuit of that positive business outcome, that PBO, each week. So if we feel like we're being derailed or pocket vetoed or something's taking longer, that's our opportunity to ask for help. And if you do it right, the notice here is you have Chevron on the left. If you do it right, we've had customers that have expanded with us 2, 3, 4 times, sometimes within 12 to 18 months. So that's secondary, tertiary deals within 12 to 18 months. We're actually nominated for an award with Chevron. They've been a fantastic team to work with. We are there as CWAM, which is Cisco Workload Optimization Manager. Cisco is a partner of ours as well, sells our technology. And we work together and collaboratively, and we've been following that, essentially this framework with them for several months. And I've got hundreds of customers where we're not necessarily nominated for awards, that's nice, but it's for us, it's a chance to constantly refine, take credit, promote the customer, and make sure that we're accountable to the outcomes set forward.
Maybe a quick one here, because I know Alex has some other content to deliver as we get to the hour, but maybe a question out to the membership is, Alex is sharing a very systematic way of getting credit and a frequency and a cadence of getting credit. I wonder, what's your reactions to that? Maybe questions you may have, or how you're looking to take the get credit concept and make it less episodic and more systematic.
That's not an easy question.
I was going to say, I'm all ears on that one. I am all ears on that one.
Well, we are actually trying something new. We are calling value realization, to make sure we engage our pre-sales team not only in deals, but to make sure the customers are getting the value that they actually expect, or if they're missing something, or if there is any value on the table that they're not using. And this is, by the way, this is a offering not only from pre-sales, but it's professional services as well. So we're combining those 2 things to make sure the customer is getting value, and actually makes our life easier. If you think about the renewal process and how complicated it can be, if you keep an engagement and alignment with the customer and start giving recommendations in advance, that will be beneficial not only for you and the renewal, but also for the customer. And you can it can also use as a pipeline generation tool. But so that we launched this program, I think 6 to 7 months ago. We're starting. There are some good products, some good stories, but I'm trying to collect even more, and then later I can probably bring that back to you. But it's definitely something that I think we should focus on, because it's beneficial for everyone, right?
Yeah, we've been instantiating this not systematically, right? Especially we've evolved roles and responsibilities, and the evolution of services here, and the responsibility of the AEs and our customer experience team. Who owns what, and who systematically needs to be going to ask for what while we're going and delivering the project and the outcomes. It's something that we're getting to the point where we're systematically, it's actually not about Leadin, tracking where accounts and customer health are, and what we've recognized is the heuristic for success. But in terms of systematically doing what you just asked, Chad, it's for us, it's a little bit episodic for my taste.
Yeah.
So am I the only one that was surprised with the weekly comment? I mean, heck, if we do it quarterly, not annually, I'm going to be happy. But weekly,
yeah.
How do you maintain that?
Yeah, that'll be a great question as well. So it looks like everybody has 10 customer success managers all the time. So how you can get all the attention?
Yeah, so obviously there are tiers of customers, right? And we're doing this for the upper tiers, and I would say tier 1, tier 2 for us. And that's usually where we have services personnel who are staff. The customer experience, which for us is kind of like the CSM, they're on the top tiers, they're doing monthly touch points, and they're typically leveraging a lot of the data that the services teams and the delivery teams are putting together. But for us, we're still in that evolution where customer experience is evolving into CSMs, and we're actually kicking around internally. Do we go to a model where sales is sales reps and CSMs are account managers? We're not there yet. We're not there. We may go there for certain tiers.
Yeah, maybe one comment here, just because Aptio's, we've struggled with this a lot, especially as we've gone down market. We could not put both a hunter sales rep and an account manager over time on every account. Right. Because as we've moved to land and expand over the past year, we have accounts where it's just a sales rep, a hunter, and then a CS advisor on my team. Yeah. And what we've actually done to kind of extreme measures to make sure we hold those sales reps accountable to actually nurturing the customer in year one, because they're off trying to get new logos all the time.
Right.
Compensation to exec touch points. And it sounds crazy in a way because that's their job, but they're really incented to hunt.
Right.
And a pretty big, a meaningful part of their comp now, and my team's comp, their advisor that they're tied to, is that they have to do 2 prescriptive exec touch points that we actually govern, read the review, and make sure they're meaningful so that there's no renewal surprises. So I'll let you know how it's working, but we rolled that out a quarter ago.
So I'm going to do, it's actually a really, really great segue, because we took a lot of the broader customer learnings, and we're coming from a place where literally a year and a half ago when I got here, when we closed a deal and I turned to the team and I said, all right, so what's our onboarding process? And the response was, it was a smaller company. And so they were saying, oh, well, this kind of looks a little bit like that customer we worked with 8 months ago. So let's go use that PowerPoint. I'm like, oh, so we don't have an onboarding process. Got it. So we really had to build things from scratch. What I found was we had so many customers that were doing things that we weren't aware of. That, in fact, half of that shock and awe slide came from our customer base. That was not originated within product management, and we went and built something. Those were customers that came back and said, oh, I was using you to balance my workloads while doing my AMD to Intel migration. Or you kept my application up while I did Meltdown Spectre patching. I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, these are great use cases. Why are we not screaming these from the rooftop? And the problem was, to your point, we didn't have a systematic touch with customers really understanding what it was they were doing. And so a big focus of the last 18 months has been listening to our customers. We've had 4 customer advisory boards. We've had several technical advisory boards. And over the course of time, while this might look a bit complex, a lot of this is really just really good fundamental account management and orchestration with customer experience, tech support, and product. But ultimately, what we found was if we have these 12 elements, right, and they're all trackable. These are all automatically trackable, right? You can, whether you're using Salesforce, Salesloft, Gainsight, you can actually track these things, and you can even weight them. So we're in the process of building an automated scorecard for these things. We're taking our Gainsight dashboard to the next level. But when we found that we have positive business outcomes, which I've talked about a lot in this presentation, when the account executive is actually doing a bi-weekly letter capturing the value that's being delivered at those tier 1, tier 2 customers in particular, and getting it back to the executive buyer, and it's on a different team to go deliver it and then pull those outcomes and fulfill that requirement for the AE. The AE is then sending it, and we're tracking it. If we know that we have started to automate within the environment, they've enabled our automation, which for us is a good usage of our product, but that we're also integrating, right? You saw that ecosystem. If we're plugging into other stuff, that means they're trusting us and they're expanding with us. Monthly touch points from our customer experience team that they have procured and are using our onboarding and advisory services. We're having a touch point per quarter with engagement with engineering and PM, especially for tier 1s and tier 2s, that they've gone through training in the lower left-hand corner, some element of training, or if they're not training and they want to operationally outsource to us, that we staff a resident engineer or a partner staffs a resident engineer, which is a great lead into the next square of identifying partners. So we're coming out of this period where we did a lot of our growth directly, and we launched our partner program last year, including our services partner program, not just resell, but services partner program, training partner program, support partner program. So now we have these partners coming to us, big partners that are really, really good at delivering world-class integrated solutions, and they're looking for technology like us to stitch a lot of things together. So partner identification for us versus last year has become a really important measured element to account success. Executive briefings scheduled, expansion opportunities within Salesforce, that we have architectural and operational champions identified, and if one moves or one changes or leaves, who's the next person or team on deck that can become our champion within the account. And then finally, the support and enhancement request statuses. These are things that ultimately most companies will track and do individually, or some of these things might be combined. What I found at my level and with the different organizations that we have working within customer success and the different types of customers that are adopting us and our rate and pace of growth, I really want to see where all of these things are on a per customer basis, especially for those top tier customers that are driving a large percentage of our business. And when we have these things, we are seeing the secondary, tertiary deals, the expansion opportunities that could be 3x, 5x what the initial deal was. And it's good because ultimately that means it's a happy customer. We get to grow, they get to grow, and we're doing what we need to do make sure they're successful. Make sense?
Absolutely. So
Chad, good lead in for the last 4 minutes.
Yep, and maybe Alex, we'll let you take the ball here because I know you wanted to share kind of ways in which you're trying to systematize. So I'll let you continue with the mic here.
Okay, so I'm not sure who it was that said about 5-10 minutes ago, like, was anybody shocked about the whole weekly update thing? And the bottom line is there is a lot of work that goes into aggregating where we are, especially if you've got a lot of work streams going on. So the outcome selling advisory has got a platform, and full disclosure, I am not compensated in any way, shape, or form for using this. But Chad and the team introduced me to this and my team to this a couple months back, and we started looking at potential customers that were okay having their data, well, just the data about our projects, put into this platform, and we use it as a bi-directional element. So meaning it's a lot easier for us to sort of plug in our positive business outcomes, and we can add and subtract as we need to and put them in green or blue or orange. We can get to the metrics tracking that we set up initially and our progress to date. And the reason why I'm going through this is because it's a lot easier to update than doing a PowerPoint every week. And then again, where are we at relative to issues and actions? Are we set up and are we managing for success? Do we have executive briefings planned? A lot of the things that I mentioned in my earlier slide, it's just taking a little while to update here. Oh, I don't know if I lost connectivity. There we go. So we have found that this platform is good not only to help us accelerate aggregating data within PowerPoints and just cut down on some hours there, but also we can expose customers to it. And so as I looked at the question that came up within the deck of how our community can evolve, ultimately what we're trying to drive towards here is getting more customer participation rather than them being a consumer of the update material and treating it like, you know, a glorified review of a Gantt chart, but they can be a participant in making sure that outcome delivery and standards are being adhered to over the course of the engagement and the project. So my team has liked this a lot, and we started to put it into play at a couple of our accounts. And I think the thing they like the most is the cut down of PowerPoint slides time, but the customer engagement component is exciting too. And we have a few pioneering customers that are piloting this with us right now.
So Alex, does this replace, like, because we use Gainsight as well, but Gainsight's weakness, if we're honest, is it's not good with customer collaboration. It's
right.
Good at 360 view, and I've given them a ton of feedback about that. I've actually referred Gainsight to ecosystems. I don't know if they've connected with you guys, because I said, you guys need to have a way to manage the customer interaction better. So does this replace the CSP then?
No, what I would see, I use Gainsight, for example, as an aggregation of this. So I have, you know, I have my heuristic, my customer heuristics aggregated here. I can weight different elements in different ways. Some things might be worth, you know, 2 to 5 points. Some things might be worth 50 points on a scale of 1. And this is that to me, but you're right. It is almost like a customer 360. I can create calls to action for the different teams in my organization, and I can get a good snapshot of what the customer health is. This platform is a little bit more about closing the gap between the day-to-day interaction with the customer and what we can automate.
Okay. And curiosity on Gainsight for you, Alex. When you came on board, it was already deployed, or you deployed it, and how long it took?
I've deployed Gainsight 3 different times at 3 different companies. I've been on their advisory board for a while now. A big evolution in that platform over the last 5 years, I'll tell you that. And so there's what I found. I could probably have a different presentation on how to get ready for Gainsight, because I think it's a great tool. It's a great platform, but what I found is that after deploying it once, what I did was I built out the customer journey, and I built out the different, for lack of a better term, like the RACI matrix of the organizations within my company that had different responsibilities with the customer during the customer journey. And I found that certain things sat in different systems, some things were manual, and I used that as a blueprint, go to the Gainsight team and say, all right, I want all of this stuff tracked. What can I track today? What's on your roadmap? And it just became a blueprint to help me implement better version 1. And what do I do in version 2? But I didn't have that the very first time I deployed, and it took us like a long time, like 6-8 months, you know, to get data from the product and the usability. And we weren't even a SaaS company. I was deploying it at Pure Storage, and it took us a while to get there. Now I've got a bit of a blueprint I use, and I'm happy to, if you want to talk offline, I can kind of show you what I've put together.
Definitely. Thanks.
Sure.
Well, Alex, you do not disappoint. I'm just so grateful for you to share your journey and your insights, and for Dion and Abhi and Jonathan and Pete and Bruno, thank you for just owning this experience and driving to the questions. That's exactly what we're looking to engender, this kind of member-driven dialogue. So wonderful session. I would, just to reinforce what Alex said, this platform that you have is available to every member. So as Alex is out there incubating and integrating this kind of bi-directional collaborative discussion, every member has access to it, and we have folks being enabled in different degrees, and feel free to either contact Kasha or myself to make sure that you have equal access to what Alex and his team are using going forward. And I'll probably just close on 2 points. We have terrific content coming up. In June, we're going to actually have somebody who has been training buyers for 20 years on how to negotiate with vendors talk to us about what buyers are looking for in a proposal from a provider. I think that's just going to be a terrific session. We've got HP going to go through a whole value realization discussion on how they look at that end-to-end process in the fall. And we also have an intelligent sales engagement platform that Forrester is going to be talking to us about. Having said that, one thing I would ask the members, just as Alex has been a leader in this, is there are stories, there are emerging best practices that you have. We would love to sit down with you and build out, because we're looking at the fall agenda, how you can have your version of this session to share your insights, or even to test ideas, to have that two-way back and forth. So perhaps a call to action from our session today would just be think about things that you feel are leading edge or things that are amorphous and that you really would love to get the member feedback on. Set up some calls with us, we'll refine it, we'll iterate, and we'll put out some compelling content for the larger ecosystem in the fall timeframe. So with that, we always promise to start on time and end on time. Alex, thank you, so appreciative of you facilitating this session. And team, community, thank you all. I wish you a great day, and we'll talk down the road.